Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 4 of the Muzzle Blast Podcast. So, on this episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with Justin Crosby, who is an accomplished F-Class shooter, who is the local F-Class match director here. He's been to a couple national matches and, according to his own words, has done pretty well. So let's sit down and have a conversation with Justin where we cover all things F-Class. We've got a really awesome FTR rifle sitting in front of us the whole time. Let's get into it on the Muzzle Blast Podcast, episode 4. Hey, what's going on, guys? We're out here with Justin Crosby. He is an F-Class shooter, pretty well-traveled and pretty well-accomplished one at that. So, Justin, I appreciate you coming on here, man.
Thank you.
We're actually down in Justin's basement here. He was, I'm fortunate enough to come over and check it out. So, we're just going to cut out a podcast real quick, talk about some F-Class stuff, and hopefully learn some secrets on how to shoot accurately. So, first off, Justin, what are some of your accomplishments? Where have you gone? How have you traveled? Like, I think you said at the match we were at last year, you put so many miles on your truck just on F-Class matches.
I did. Last year, 2018, I put on 9,800 miles on my pickup truck in matches alone. That's the only time I drove the truck. So, I'm fortunate. I get to travel a bit. We're from Utah, so all the mid-range, long-range F-Class matches here. We shoot in Centerville, Utah for our mid-range and Wendover, Utah for our long-range. If you'd like a challenge, Wendover's the place. A lot of Mirage. We shoot right off the salt flats.
That's pretty cool.
It's a lot of Mirage. I shot in Sparks, Nevada, long-range. That's a really neat range near Pyramid Lake. We're actually headed there in about a month to shoot there again, I think. I've shot Raton for the Nationals. I did pretty darn well. I'm happy with that. I've shot at the Southwest Nationals. Those are in Phoenix in February. I've been able to shoot that twice. Montana, boy, you're not going to beat the Missoula range for the place to be in the beauty. It's amazing.
Above and beyond.
Oh, you go there to camp and you get to shoot at the same time.
That sounds pretty awesome. I'm going to have to cruise out there with you at some time on that one.
It's a fantastic. It's my favorite range to go to. Idaho, we shoot at Rexburg. I go down there or up there for long range. Rawlins, Wyoming. It's Rawlins. There's not much to see, but they've got a really fun range there. So it's flat. The sagebrush is short, and there's a lot of wind.
Conducive for long range shooting.
It is fantastic for testing your long range skills.
Right on. And you actually are the match director for the Centerville match that I've gone to. So yeah. Justin was the guy who I reached out to go to my first match. I sent him quite a bit of questions that he responded with every answer that I needed. Got all my confidence up I needed to get out there, and he's been helping me out ever since on all those small or big things that I've asked questions about. So
and you've done well.
I really appreciate the help on that. So.
Absolutely.
But so sitting right in front of us, why don't you tell us a little bit about this setup you got? Because it's a little bit different than what most people would run.
This is my FTR rifle. FTR is one of the two divisions in F-Class. So in order for this to be FTR, first off, the caliber has to either be a 223 or 308. This is a 308. Not a lot of guys shoot the 223, especially at long range. You do see it at mid-range, and we actually had a mid-range this last Saturday, and the 223 did very well. I won't tell the score, but he might have beat all of the other guys. He did fantastic. It also has to be shot off of a bipod. The bipod, as you can see, doesn't have to be folding. This is a Seb Joypod, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but this has a little arm that adjusts the elevation and the side to side. This is a very popular bipod for FTR. The other one would be a Phoenix. The stock is a GRS. The action's a Defiance. The barrel's a Krieger.
And I actually came over not too long ago, and we were talking about bipods, and they let me hold this thing. This thing's incredibly light.
Yeah, it
is. Like, amazingly light. It looks like this big, heavy chunk of hardware. Do you know off the top of your head, isn't it like 11 ounces or something?
It's more than that. I think it was like 18 or 20 or something. It's insanely light, though. It's all aluminum. It's incredible. It holds in a massive amount of weight. The creator, Seb, There's a photo of him online somewhere out there where he's somehow balancing on this. It's crazy. He's got great balance, but besides that, it's very strong. So, of course, I'm using my Vortex Golden Eagle. I love that. It really helped me out a bunch. My Bixen Andy trigger. It's a great rifle. Love it. It's been a lot of fun. Love the 308 caliber. It's pretty easy to load for.
Right off the top of your head, do you know what the weight limit is on the FTR rigs?
18.18 pounds.
So what does your rifle weigh? About?
It's as it is, right? If I took off these caps, it'd be over with these caps. It's right there. It made weight every time it's been weighed. I actually had to remove I had steel rings on. I had to remove those rings and put on aluminum rings to get my weight there.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So, on your trigger itself, I know a lot of F-class guys run those extremely light.
Yes.
Where's yours set?
I have no idea.
No idea. Just
very light.
Very light.
Yeah, I go by feel. Some guys like to put a feel gauge on or a gauge to measure on there. I didn't. I took it down further than I could or should have, and it was just too light. So I went back up and added a little bit, but it's very, very light. It doesn't take much to set it off, and I know some guys would probably take theirs even a little lighter. Mine's a 2-stage.
Oh, okay.
So I like having that little bit of flop and then just barely touching it.
Yeah, and I recently put a 2-stage in one of my Tikas, and I had a guy talking about how much trigger travel it had, but I'm like, it's a bolt action. You're not cycling the trigger real quick, so really the length of pull on a trigger on a bolt gun is irrelevant to me.
It's very minimal.
But I do like the 2-stage as well. I've got one in my semi-auto gun, got one in my bolt gun. Yeah, so the FTR rigs are limited on caliber. I shoot my rifle at an F-class match off of a bipod, but it's not one of those calibers, so that bumps me into the open class.
Right.
Have you shot other classes like sling or anything like that?
I've never shot sling. I got into this actually shooting a sling rifle. A friend from Three Forks, Montana, invited me to a match. He was working with me. We were on a mine site together, and he invited me. And I bought the rifle. I told him if he ever wanted to sell it, I wanted the rifle. I just bought it and actually just rebarreled it.
Oh, okay.
It's a 6.250. Beautiful rifle, beautiful stock, gorgeous. And he said, "Yeah, you're going to shoot sling?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I've never shot it, and now I put a full contour barrel on it, so I never could. It was too heavy. I don't think I could hold it up. I've shot F open with that rifle. F open is again any caliber. You could shoot 308 if you wanted, but the difference there is you have 22 pounds, and it might be 20.20. I'm not quite sure.
Roughly 20 to 22 pounds.
Yeah,
heavy for a rifle.
It's very heavy, but you get to shoot off of the main advantage will be you can shoot off of a front rest. And again, Seb's is the Seb Neo. It's very, very popular.
So what he means by a front rest is it's actually separate from the rifle. It basically has a little U-shaped leather saddle, typically, that they sit in, and then under recoil they'll slide in that rest.
Right.
And there's all sorts of crazy mechanical adjustments they make. They make them free recoil a perfect amount, and there's some real crazy equipment that goes into this. It's really impressive. It's a lot of fun to show up to the shooting line and just see what people have brought out, because it's not often that you get to see rifles in this class. So very cool.
Yep, I like it.
So how long ago did you get into F class?
Well, the email I sent you about your bipod said 2013. I didn't realize it had been that long. Full time, this is my fourth season full time. Well, going into my fifth year now. I started off with a 308, just simple bolt rifle. Then I bought a Seiko. The stock didn't quite work for me. It didn't fit me. I sold that, and I had an opportunity to buy this Defiance Action, and so I started getting into the custom build. So fifth year, I've had a lot of fun, shot a lot of matches. I average about 2,300 rounds a year. in matches, and it's a blast.
Have you had to rebarrel a 308 yet?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So,
2 seasons.
2 seasons.
I'm getting 2 seasons out of it, and that's it.
That's pretty funny because online you'll hear people, oh, you'll never shoot a 308 out. Well, if you shoot enough, you will. That's pretty impressive.
I've got my backup rifle to this one, and I do have a backup because I was shooting this at the 2017 Burger Nationals and Southwest Nationals. I'm sorry, and the scope broke. It was not a Vortex. I'm not gonna say who it was, but the scope broke, and I was fortunate. Someone gave me lent me a scope off of their spare rifle, and after that, I have a spare for these big matches, and it has 1,600 rounds down the barrel, is what I counted last week, and I have fire cracking, which is the stress of that shooting, and it's probably a third way down the barrel already.
So are you getting to a point now where you're thinking you're going to replace it? Is that a need to replace it, or?
That is, you will see that rifle at our mid-range matches.
Okay.
You probably won't see it at our long-range matches.
Okay.
The accuracy is still good enough for mid-range. I'm comfortable with it, but long, unless it's raining. This will not get rained on. If it's raining, the other one will get rained on.
Justin really likes this one.
I like it a lot.
I can't blame him at all. It's a really beautiful rig. So a big portion of F-class shooting is reloading.
Yes.
Which is also a fairly big part of what I do on my channel.
Yeah.
So I've asked another guest on my podcast before, Uintah Precision, what he thought led to what makes the biggest difference in accuracy, in your opinion, at least. So what would you say would make the biggest difference in accuracy? It would be seating depth, powder charge, concentricity, something like that.
Gosh, that's tough. All of it.
All of it.
I think you need the whole package. You know, when I started this, I was using, and Logan's seen my setup and how it's matured over the years, and how much money I spent maturing with it. Don't tell anyone about that.
Yeah, what's awesome is I got to come over here now and be like, well, what does work? He's like, that does and that does, and so I got to skip the whole middle ground.
Yeah, you do.
I appreciate that.
It's definitely matured over time. It's the the quality of the components. We've talked about great brass and not great brass. Bullets, certainly powders that you can use. And I started out with just the very basics, and as I've gotten more involved, I've understood that even primers can be different. And so I started learning testing about primers. Then you get into different dyes, what different dyes can do. I'm now the kind of guy that uses, and I've talked to you about it, an expander mandrel.
I do as well.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Full length everything now. I got away from the neck only.
I do as well.
Yeah.
So those are two good things going for me. That sounds good.
Annealing. I now anneal after every firing. I found out that helped my seating depth be more consistent. I honestly, Bud, it's everything and all of it. And as long as you do it as consistently as possible, you're going to have consistent results on the target, whether you're shooting mid-range at 600 or long-range at 1,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some of the equipment over there. You got some really high-grade scales and whatnot. Something I'm looking to pick up soon is a concentricity gauge, as well as probably an arbor press soon.
Yeah.
You care to tell anybody what an arbor press is versus standard press?
The arbor press is, instead of the standard where you just screw it in the top, usually the arbor, it squeezes it. You basically have a ram and it just squeezes it. And I did a lot of testing. I showed Logan all my testing, and in the end, seating with an arbor was more concentric by a lot.
Yeah, and I was actually struggling to remember what I wanted to say there. You're very meticulous about the notes you make for things, which is really impressive.
I have to. I'm older. I'll forget.
And when I started out with my 243 and my 223, it was fairly easy to remember what I had going on each. But now I've got an array of rifles, and it does get tricky because I've got fired brass that's been this stuff's 3 times, this stuff's 2 times, this stuff's new, and then I don't touch it for 2 months, and I'm like, well, what happened? So I need to start upping my game on that aspect as well.
Yeah, I recommend anyone that reloads to have a notebook, and it doesn't have to be fancy, whatever your notebook has to look like, but you've got to keep a lot of great notes in what you're doing so you can keep track of round counts. So I mean, even right now. So it rained this February at the Southwest Nationals in Phoenix, and so the rifle didn't come out. I pulled out the backup rifle. If you ask me what this is zeroed out right now, I could guess. But my notes will probably tell me it's 1,000 yards. It pays off to have notes everywhere you go, and eventually you're going to start experimenting, and you got to keep track of all of what those experiments came across, because you don't want to redo an experiment. You've done it once. They're hard enough to replace the barrel some days.
Exactly.
Just learn it once and move on.
So what are some of the different ranges in competitions that you've shot? So like mid-range, where we're at, we shoot at 600.
Yep. Mid-range for NRA is 300, 500, and 600. I've shot 300, and it's tough to work the target because it's so small. So the X-ring at 300 is 1.5 inches. And everyone hits it, and you blow the center out, and it's a lot of work to fix it. I don't like it. The 600 we shoot at's great. It's enough of a challenge. The centers don't get blown out so quickly. You can see the X after a while.
Well, my centers don't get blown out so quick.
You're doing great.
I've seen some other guys up there. Their X is flapping in the wind. So
it happens.
Retrieve targets.
It happens. And then long range is 8, 9, and 1,000. We shoot. That's called Palma style. I'm not sure where it really originated from, but the beautiful thing about Palma is you can warm up. So in our case at 800, and you can start getting the feel for what the range is doing. So as you back up, once you get to 1,000, then you're ready to go. I'd just rather just go to 600 or go to 1,000 and let's just go for it. Let's have fun.
Gotcha.
So some people aren't like that. Some people want to warm up to it and back up, and the challenge is definitely your come-ups. If you don't have that right, you're going to pay, especially if you only have 2 ciders.
Yeah, and it's interesting because at the end of each one of my strings, I can screenshot the target, and at that point, it's perfectly clear what was going on. I can see where my bullets were landing and how things are going. Yeah. Hopefully, it's a nice flat line. But as you're shooting, it really, for me at least, it feels like they're all over the place, and I'm just trying to get it back on center. And then at the end, I've got a nice flat bar where I can see, okay, a little bit of wind, a little bit of wind there, and the majority of my rounds landed low on the X or something like that. And
we actually made that comment while you were shooting. I tried to give you the hint this Saturday, and you didn't hear. I didn't say it loud enough, like, if he had the courage to come up one more click, he would have a pile of them in the 10 ring.
And afterwards, I look at that and I can say, oh yeah, I should have been a half MOA higher. Yeah. Which, speaking of, I was standing there having a conversation with you, and we were watching a guy in front of us shoot. Yeah. And you were watching the wind, and the shooter was a newer one, a little less experienced. He was watching where his bullet was impacting.
Right.
And every shot that he would fire, you would correctly tell me where the bullet had landed without he's just standing behind him watching the wind flags. He'd say, that hit the 9 ring on the left side. And sure enough, it'd pop up on our little screens because they're digital targets. Right. Really cool. And then the next one, right side 9 ring, and that's exactly where it'd be. So seeing your experience right there was really, really impressive right there.
Thank you.
I'd have no idea what was going on. I'd be like, wow, that was cool. Oh, he went all the way to the other side. That's a mystery.
There's really, and you and I talked about this, there's several ways to shoot. One of the ways that we talked about and what this shooter was doing was he was chasing the spotter. So wherever his last shot went, he counteracted it and went to the opposite side of the target.
I'm guilty of doing that.
Yeah, and we all are when we start, especially because you don't know what you're doing. But if you figure if the wind's somewhat consistent, then you can make that happen. But eventually that'll burn you. And as we saw, I think he flung one way out there to the 7 or something like that.
Yep, and he was bouncing side to side. We got some German Shepherds.
Yeah, my German Shepherd's guarding us right now, so he's a good dog. The better way, though, is reading the wind. And that's truly, I've heard people put percentages to it. My good friend, Ian, who's the national champion twice in a row now, he says it's about 70% of this is wind reading. And I swear I put about 100% into it, and that's where I still struggle. It's a lot of wind reading. You need to understand what flags will do, what Mirage will do, what Mirage and flags will do. It's different from, say, a PRS shooter. They have to watch different things. Ours are flags and Mirage. And if you can get a feel, and it's not the same. You shoot either a 6.5 millimeter bullet or a 7. I'm shooting a 30.
Absolutely.
And so I can't tell you what your wind will be like for yours. Quite frankly, I don't know if I could shoot a 7. It'd be fun to try, but I don't know.
Might be overcompensated.
I'd probably blow away out and you guys would laugh at me. Because I'm so used to the 30 cal and you really got to work it. So everyone's going to be a little different. Their loads are going to be different. Their BCs are going to be different with their speeds and stuff. But in the end, when you can get the feel for it, it's great. It's really fun to watch, and it's great to get those high scores when you're reading it just right.
Yeah, and luckily the wind was pretty low, so I was able to get a higher than my normal score there, which is a lot of fun. So what length barrel are you running on this 308 right here?
This one's a 28 inch. I personally prefer the 28 over the 30. Most guys will want the 30 for the speed. You gain about, generally speaking, 20 to 25 more feet per second per inch. I want the 28 because of the whip. I wanted more rigidity, less whip. I don't know if I got lucky on this. The first time I've ever run this contour, I called the barrel manufacturer. I told them the weight I wanted, not necessarily anything else, and they made this contour for me based on weight. But I can tell you this barrel with this contour, with this length, it doesn't shoot any different cold bore as it does hot. I don't know if I got lucky. I probably did.
So
I'm grateful.
I stopped by a barrel manufacturer in southern Utah, and they were saying that I think I'm trying to get the right term here, stress relieved barrels are less sensitive to that. In fact, they shouldn't have any difference between being hot and cold.
Really?
And I wonder if that was an aspect of what your barrel has.
I don't know. It's a Krieger barrel. It's been a great barrel for me. I don't know if that made a difference or not. Some people tell me they've never had a barrel that doesn't shoot different, hot or cold. I can tell you my other Krieger on my backup rifle does have a difference. And it's generally about a minute.
And that was something I noticed on my first string this last match. I have a shilling on my 6.5 Creedmoor, and my first shot hit pretty high, and then about round 5 it started leveling off. So I brought it down after the first shot, and then it slowly kept creeping up, and then it leveled off.
Right.
So if I look at my pattern on my screenshot now, I can see exactly what happened. There's a couple up here, and then it starts low, and then they creep back up, and then a little group come up there.
And that's the hard part about the two ciders. So generally in FTR, you're going to run across two things: either unlimited ciders, which is just that you can take all the ciders you want, and then you shoot for record, which if it's palm, it's supposed to be 15 shots for record. If it's not palm, it's 20. Or you're going to have two ciders, and what they'll usually do is say unlimited ciders for your first to get things figured out for you in that particular range, and then after that your two ciders. And if you have a rifle that's sensitive to that, it's going to show, and somehow you need to pattern that. And that's what I've done with that backup rifle. Is I'm like you. My first shot will be a minute high. I don't even touch it. I know the second shot will go down, and I'll even try to adjust for it and go up right off the bat. There's some matches like up at Missoula, at their matches, and even ours, we do the first shot on X, and you get a pin or you can get a prize or something like that. And so if you know how that rifle's going to react that first cold bore shot, you can get a cool pin. And we already talked that we like to collect pins and stickers.
Pins and patches and stickers.
That's right.
And that's definitely something. It's going to be interesting to see if my rifle continues that trend. Like we were talking about unlimited ciders and whatnot. At our local match, you guys are very generous in letting people figure out their loads and whatnot. So on my last match, I shot 2 strings with Hornady bullets, and then my last string I shot Barnes. I shot the Barnes. I believe it landed low on my first shot and then high on the second one. And so I didn't make any adjustments. I shot my third shot for a cider, and it landed within an inch of my second shot. So at that point, I was like, all right, let's bring it down. And then that held the best group that I shot that day.
Yeah.
So really interesting. They're unique animals. You got to figure them out a little bit.
They are. Bullets are different. Shapes are different. Ogive's different. And that's why that consistency still comes into play. You've got to load that thing the same way every time, so it's predictable.
What type of bullet and load are you running in yours currently, in the past?
I run a Berger 220X bullet. That's, I think it's safe to say, the most popular bullet for FTR, for the 308. You'll also see some 185s and such. My powder is Vitavori N150. I'm definitely one of the few that run that. From what I've heard, a lot of guys run N140.
Okay.
If they do Vitavori. Varget's another super popular one. The brass is Lapua. And I won't give you the powder.
No,
powder charge.
Yeah, I do that. Do you have a custom throat in your rifle?
I do.
Just to stretch your bullet out and give you more powder capacity?
Yeah, so the cool thing, if you need a little of a bump of an ego, go order your own reamer, and they'll call it after you. So I have a 308 Crosby. All it is is just threaded out a little bit deeper so I can push the bullet beyond the neck so I don't have the donut issues. So I have a 308 Crosby. I have a 6.250 Crosby.
Yeah, that was one I heard you mention. What is a 6.250 even? I don't know what that is.
No, it's just a 22.250 neck up to fit a 6mm.
Okay, so is that pretty similar to a 243?
It'd be less. The 243 is the
308
is
case.
Yeah, the offspring of that, and so the 6.250 is smaller.
Okay.
The 22.50 is smaller.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not as fast as a 243.
I bet that thing's a riot to shoot, though.
It's an absolute blast to shoot. That's why I had to buy a new barrel. I wore it out. Just shooting here at our local, just right across the street there.
Mm-hmm.
I wore it out completely. And it started shooting really, really bad. I'm like, well, new barrel time.
Yeah, I had my 243. I shot maybe 1,000 or so rounds down it. I knew it was coming up on the end of its life, so I used that as a good excuse to switch over to the 7mm side of things. I was going to go to a tight twist 243, and then as things go, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do an actually improved. And then as I thought about it, I was like, for the same costs, I can go all the way up to a 7mm.
Yeah.
Let's go all out for it.
Sure.
So that's what I ended up doing. I noticed you had some 6BR stuff back there. Did you ever shoot that at mid-range or long-range?
I didn't. My youngest son did. I took him around, not last summer, summer before. He shot at Billings, Montana. I took him to local matches here, and he got to shoot it. He did okay. The beauty about the 6BR is the recoil.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a fantastic mid-range cartridge. Performs real well. It's not very expensive to shoot. I'm not, in the full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure that barrel was worn out, but I never liked it. It was a pencil barrel, really thin, and it would develop some big whip as it got warm.
I bet it would, yeah.
And so I just decided to rebarrel it too. So it's got a really nice heavy varmint barrel on there.
Yeah, that was another issue. Is I had the Tika T3X light.
Yeah.
So 243, really light barrel. About 4 rounds, that thing was almost too hot to touch. You shoot 5, it's hot.
And where we're shooting 20 here.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the reasons I didn't get into the F class a year sooner.
Right.
At that point, I ended up getting my 6.5 Creedmoor, which I ended up getting some Mirage pretty bad around shot 5. How do you deal with Mirage on your rigs?
Just like what you were seeing here. So I have the Velcro strips on my barrel, and you can put something flat over that to help dissipate, and that Mirage will kind of float over that. I bought something pretty fancy. It's a carbon fiber heat shield I bought from a vendor online. I wish I could remember his name right now because it's really nice. Some guys get pretty fancy, and they apparently hope their wives don't miss the shade screen on their window and go and pull one off and cut it and put it on.
I've got one. I've already got the one in mind. I actually know when I moved into my house, it was missing one, so maybe there was an F-class shooter.
There probably
in my house
was.
before.
Yeah, he probably stole it. That's really the easiest way, and it just needs to get near the end of the barrel, nothing big, and that helps considerably.
I've actually thought about running a Kydex tube attached to the scope the length of the barrel. I know I'd look like a goon out there, but essentially it should do the
You
same
make
thing.
weight, you're fine.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Kydex is pretty light. Can we turn this sideways a little
Absolutely,
bit?
whatever you
Let
want.
these people check
Go
it out
ahead.
because it's a really pretty rifle. Ugh. And it's not light.
It's 18.18
So.
pounds or close to.
Yeah, here you guys. There you guys go. If you're listening on the podcast, check YouTube. It's a really good looking rig. It's got the full polished Defiance action, stainless barrel, and it's a blue and gray laminate stock from GRS. Which these GRX stocks are really interesting because the grip on them is actually canted out a little bit. They're extremely comfortable to get behind. It's a really cool stock for sure.
Yeah, and I put that Mirage. It's called a Mirage shield. I just put it there, and I've seen some people actually do it out of cloth. It's some kind of elastic cloth, and it'll hook here, and then it hooks onto the Velcro there and holds tight. I'm not sure if there's a wrong way.
Yeah, I think I've seen some guys on Instagram doing something similar to that. As far as scopes go and magnification, what do you feel is good? What are you looking for in a scope for F-class shooting?
You want magnification. I know I'm very sensitive to dark, and so I don't turn mine up as much as what other people do. I generally shoot mine between 40 and 35. This is a Golden Eagle, so it'll go all the way up to 60. I know some guys will go up to 60 and hold it there. I'm a little too sensitive with the black target face, with a black reticle, and my optic being too dark for certain days. So I've gotten used to that. With the Mirage we get here in Utah, especially at Wendover, to set your parallax, it gets awfully tough. And so I tend to just to leave it, and I just get used to that.
Where do you try and set your parallax for? Are you trying to see the target, or are you trying to see halfway down to look at wind?
With the rifle scope, it has to be the target.
Okay.
Because it will be messed up on the target side. What some F-class shooters will do, and I tried to learn from them, and some of them do it very well. I was too much multitasking for me. Was they will also get a spotting scope and set it up here on the other side, so they just have to move their head to look, and they will dial that, as you said, halfway back so they can see what that Mirage is. The Golden Eagle has the little, I can't remember what they call it, dioptic, so it cuts the field of view down
Oh, okay.
so you can see through that.
So essentially, for the people listening on the podcast, think
Or
of a
reduces.
scope cap that if you had a 3-inch opening on the end of the scope, or a 50 millimeter scope objective, it closes into about 35 or 40 millimeters. So
That'll increase my depth of field, so I'm still parallaxed on my target, but I can see more of that Mirage and keep track of that better. In the end, what I've learned is the Mirage will tell you more than anything else, and that's how I read my wind usually.
yeah, so basically with I've learned a little bit about the camera world recently. The f-stop,
Yes.
you have a smaller number,
Exactly.
which is basically like your scope without this ring on it has a higher f-stop, so
Yes.
you get a narrow window that's in focus, and then if you put this on, it increases your f-stop, to a higher number to where more things are in focus at one time. Okay, so.
Yep, I believe that's how it works.
I didn't know that had that. That's really interesting.
So I use that. I don't take it off. That's why it was a little hard to get off, I think. It was because I got on there pretty good. But that helps me with my Mirage reading. So I gave up on the spotting scope. It was just another piece of equipment to the line. And, we can get so much clutter on there, and you've got to get it off. And it's just easier. So that's how I do that. And again, where we shoot here in Utah, Mirage isn't a problem. You got plenty of it.
Yeah, that's no doubt. Now the range that we shoot on for the mid-range is a really cool range. We're shooting halfway up the side of a mountain, and there's basically 2 big ravines that come up.
Yes.
And at the 300-yard line, we have a flag hanging out there on a little feature on the mountain that sticks out, and then you've got 2 valleys front and rear, and oftentimes the wind will be doing complete opposites from where you're at to the firing line, and with the flags you can see them blowing in opposite directions. It's really interesting the way you can watch the wind dance around.
It's great, and I think that's why we have, when our shooters go to other matches and other places, that's probably why they do so well, is because of the challenge we have with our mid-range even, because we are literally on the side of a mountain. The bench we shoot on is the old prehistoric Lake Bonneville.
Mm-hmm.
So we're literally perched up there. We got a beautiful view. It's great.
It is a really cool view, especially when you're laying down prone, because it looks like you've got this hill and then just nothing, and you can see the Salt Lake out in the distance.
So it does create wind challenge though, and that's where you get to learn which flag you want to pay attention to. The closest one, the one on that feature on the right, or the farthest one on the left.
So do you focus on one specific flag?
Yes, I do.
Oh, there we go. There's a big secret. I didn't know that. I've been trying to watch all 3 at once with one eye. Okay, that's good to know.
It is very much range specific though. And through fancy stuff that I don't know about, really in the end they say the bullet's going to be most affected up close.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to pay attention to the closest flags. Unless you're at Centerville.
Unless you're, okay. I think that's about all he's going to tell me on that.
Probably.
No, that's really cool. I noticed that you do have a level on your scope.
I do.
Are you leveling your rifle between every shot, or does this bipod hold it pretty solid?
It holds it real solid. Actually, there's a pad that still goes underneath this.
Okay.
And so once I get it level, it usually stays. And really for me, once I have the reference of level, after that I'm, the old hold off or Kentucky windage after that, and I'm not playing with, unless we get big winds. If we get real big winds, I start losing track of how many rings, and when I start holding off on other targets next to it, I get really lost. I've got to start turning the knob. It's just too much.
Now you were telling me a little bit about a match you went to where the wind was probably the worst you've ever tried to shoot in.
It is.
Do you want to talk about that?
We were last year at the Idaho Regional up in Rexburg. They had a massive wind event come through on the second day. They actually called the match. I was at 11 minutes at 900 yards. And I was obviously turning that turret a lot. The guy that I was scoring for when we went to 1,000 yards was 22 minutes on his rifle.
That's almost as much sideways as it is come up.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just crazy. We had people missing targets by 3 targets over. Targets were blowing out of their holders. It was chaos. It was.
I love that. I love the fact that everybody was still shooting up to that point, though.
Why not? We're gonna try it. You're surviving. Here in Utah, and that was 11 was my high, my personal best. That's the way I look at it. Why not? But here in Utah, my personal best was 10 in Wendover. I had 10 minutes on.
That's moving for sure. Because these high BC 308s, they might drop quite a bit by the time they get there, but they're still cutting through the wind pretty good.
Yep.
Do you have an idea what the BC is on roughly?
I don't, mainly because I also I point my bullets.
Oh, okay.
So that helps.
Get back to that. Do you trim your meat plat?
I do not.
You don't? You just
No,
point it?
I think I'd mess it up. I've read several things. Of course, a lot of us in the F-class world have read Brian Litz's stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very popular. And ballistician, he's done a great job. And in the end, to trim it, just to sharpen it again, just doesn't make sense to me. So I will go ahead and put that point on it. It's real easy to do, but that's as far as I'll go. I will not measure anything on the bullets. I won't weigh primers. I won't even weigh my brass. You were kind of having a laugh at my expense a little bit. I don't even clean my brass.
Yeah. We were looking at his pile of brass, and you were mentioning you don't know how many times any specific piece has been fired.
No.
And then they haven't been cleaned.
No.
So really,
Carbon in the neck. I kneel after every one, so I really don't care if I'm putting the primer in the pocket and it seems too loose for safety. I throw it away.
chuck it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep.
Now, it was 308 Palma brass, which brings up totally
Yes.
off topic. I guess we'll go with that.
Sure.
Do you prefer the large rifle smart primer,
Palma.
Palma?
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to just increase pressure? Is that what you're going for, and increase speed?
A little bit, not a lot, but mainly longevity.
Longevity.
Yeah, I mean, when I shoot as much as I do, and over 2,000 rounds every year, that could be a lot of brass.
Yeah.
And even with a kneeling, and so for something to last longer, that I don't have to keep on buying and having a higher inventory.
Now, do you load up, say, 1,000 rounds in the winter while you got some downtime, or do you load as you go through the matches and kind of chase your rifle around?
I'm so superstitious.
That's got me to 2 a.m. the night before?
No, not the night. I've done it, but that's my own bad.
I've done it, and I've only shot 3 of it.
The week before.
Okay.
I did, and part of this is testing, and we have the off season here, especially in Utah, right?
It's cold.
Yep. So I've done testing. I saw a difference. I had some stuff that was 3 months old, and I put my lab radar chronograph on it, and I went from single-digit SDs and low ES below 20 to double both of those. I've had some people, I've witnessed it. A gentleman that shoots F Open with us, he bought a rifle from a good friend of mine up in Cody, Wyoming, and he inherited 500 rounds. It was loaded a year before, and he classified as a master on that ammo. I couldn't have gotten away with that. I would have had vertical, and but it makes me feel better to do it a week before, and it makes it hard when you're shooting the Southwest Nationals or the Nationals when you're loading between 300 and 500 rounds, but I do it.
Now, on my podcast, traditionally, I guess I've gone 2 for 4 now, where I'm supposed to do it towards the start of the podcast, give people an idea of who we're talking to, but I call them cold bore questions, where they're questions that are just a little off topic a little bit, just give people an idea who we're talking to. And it relates back to what we were talking about. Do you have a specific meal that you will eat before a match?
Just nothing heavy.
Nothing heavy?
No, your heartbeat goes to the scope, and
okay.
And I'll even cut my coffee down to maybe a cup.
See, and that's one thing, is I've really started drinking a lot more water, and I thought about drinking a soda before the match, but I figured with the caffeine, now that I'm drinking less of it, I just decided to stick with water for that morning.
Yeah.
And go with that.
Yeah, less is better.
Okay. Good
So,
to know.
no, not superstitious at all on what I eat.
So, not stopping at Maverick and getting a grease ball.
Definitely not stopping at Maverick getting a grease ball. No, I won't do that.
That's good stuff. So we'll just go into my second cold bore question. If rifles weren't around, what would be another hobby for you? What's something else that you'd be interested in?
Wow. Probably, and I used to have another hobby. It was mountain property.
Mountain property?
Yep, I had 20 acres. It actually got burned up in the Dollar Ridge fire. All of it, yeah. Kind of a bummer. Took out the trailers and little mini cabins and stuff, but that's a lot of fun to get out, get away. As much fun as this is, I can take myself too serious at times.
And when you're talking about pointing bullets and trimming meat plats and all that, and that's something that I've looked at and like, okay, that's really interesting. But for me, I'm like, for what I'm doing, I just want to load and shoot. Really, that's what I like to do.
Well, and it was striking to me actually in your first video with us, whenever that was, and you had said, it didn't feel like a competition to me. I was just having a lot of fun, and it's truly whatever people want to make it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If people want to compete, which you're getting there, you
I
sent me some text trying to get some competition.
And what I really meant by that is it didn't feel like anybody there was trying to beat me. Like, I can try and keep up and compete with others, but on my first one, everybody was just super helpful. Hey man, need any help? You got what you need? Yeah, that's awesome. Like at the match, a couple people are switching around rear rest because no matter what, anytime I go shooting, I forget something. And turns out this last one, I forgot my chamber flag, which I made a cool custom one. I put a remove before flight tag on it. So really cool, sitting on my reloading bench. And I pretty much made it for this event. So. And so it's probably a good thing that you are the match director, being that you're a safety director.
I don't know. I run it a little loose, I think. I tell everyone if they get shot, we're going to keep shooting, so don't get shot.
No, I've seen a couple ceasefires go on at the matches, so I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
Really awesome.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. We have a good time.
So, well, cool, Justin. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me, man. I appreciate you sharing the info, even though you didn't give up the secret of the wind there. Maybe after we turn off the camera, I'll pry it out of you.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Thanks, everyone, for stopping by the Muzzle Blast Podcast. This is Justin Crosby. Hope you guys learned something about F-Class, and definitely get out and try a match. It's just fun. It's a good time.
Yeah.
So,
it's addictive.
Appreciate it.
It's very addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, all right, guys, that was episode 4 of the Muzzle Blast Podcast. Thanks so much for listening all the way through. I greatly appreciate it. Be sure to check the description. There may be a few links in there. Follow my Instagram. Definitely follow my YouTube. And check out the podcast on all your favorite applications like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a few others as well. I really appreciate your time, and we will see you guys in episode 5.